This is a video of a high-level overview of the complete correspondence engine. This suite of correspondence-related solutions was designed to bring simplicity and opportunity to companies sending out large volumes of secure correspondence, either by email or post. Let's introduce a few roles and hypotheticals to give a taste of what our correspondence engine can do. Let's imagine that Acme Corporation is an insurance company that sends out correspondence to members, employees, and providers. Meanwhile, Alice the admin works for Acme. Alice is responsible for designing and implementing correspondence communications to members. Acme also employs Peter, the phone rep. Peter takes calls from members and makes sure they get the help they need. Finally, let's imagine Mark the member. Mark carries Acme Corporation's insurance and occasionally picks up the phone to call member service for help. In this demo, Alice the admin is going to design and approve a corporate communication. Mark the member is going to request that Peter the phone rep send it to him. Let's begin our tour with a quick overview of the admin tool. Here we are looking at Alice's homepage, on which Alice can review various stats that interest her. Our first stop is a utility we call recipient sources. Here we define the third-party data that we want to use in our correspondence. Let's take a look at an example. If we look at the previously defined third-party source called member, we can click the test button to get some sample data. A1 is an example member ID for this recipient source. If we submit, we get the first name, city, email address, etc. for this particular member. As we will see, this data is available for use in our correspondence. We can easily bring in data from local databases, a database link, an ODBC connection, a JSON feed, and an XML feed to throw out some examples. Moving on, our next stop is what we call Correspondence Layout. These are the chrome around the correspondence that we send. A good strategy is to keep these pretty generic so that we can apply one layout to many pieces of correspondence. Continuing with our demo, Alice is preparing a new piece of correspondence that requires a new layout. She has prepared her layout using Microsoft Word. As we can see, she has seeded her layout with substitution strings designated by curly Q brackets. She has decided to keep this layout very general so that she can use it for many correspondence types. Each correspondence type will have the opportunity to define the content that is passed into the letter body substitution string we see here. Satisfied with her layout, Alice uploads her Word document to the admin portal. The final stop on this admin leg of the tour is what we call Correspondence Type. Here is where we merge our layouts and our recipient sources to design individual types of correspondence. Alice is creating a new correspondence type. She designates that it should use the member recipient source we just looked at. And she passes in an example member ID to seed the correspondence type with some sample data for testing. She calls it demo verification of eligibility. And she designates that it should be made available for member reps, such as Peter the phone rep, to use. Her other options include automated batch for sending out anything from yearly W-9s to monthly activity statements, and ad hoc batch for sending out mass correction statements, welcome letters, etc. These correspondence type use descriptions will be covered in separate tutorials. After submitting, Alice lands on the Correspondence Type edit page. There are many configuration options here, but for this tutorial, she's just going to make a few tweaks. Alice begins by picking the layout she just uploaded. Next, she defines a secondary data source to bring in special data particular to this correspondence type. She saves. She tests that the addition of the secondary data source was successful by repulling the sample data with an example client ID. We can see that the secondary web source supplied additional data she can use. Scrolling back to the template, she writes the content that will be passed into the letter substitution string we saw in her layout. That done, she determines that this correspondence type is now, quote, ready for use. She saves her changes. Back on the Manage Correspondence Type page, she can test that her newly defined correspondence type using the sample data she provided. We can see that the substitution strings were populated satisfactorily. Alice's job is now completed. Let's see how her work is made available to Peter the phone rep and Mark the member. Here we find ourselves looking at the member rep tool. Let's imagine that Peter the phone rep has Mark the member on the phone and has pulled up Mark's correspondence history for reference. Mark asks Peter to send him a verification of eligibility. Peter picks the requisite correspondence type from his menu. He has the opportunity to verify/edit the content and verify Mark's address. By Mark's request, Peter sends Mark an email with a link to the content that will be made immediately available to him in his member portal. Here we can see Mark's member portal, which his email linked him to. He has the full history of correspondence with Acme, and most importantly, he has access to his verification of eligibility as requested. This completes the bird's eye demo of the capability and mechanics of the complete correspondence engine.